Good morning and welcome to Conversations in Black, Where Are We Now? My name is Camelia Clayton and I am the Social Media and Marketing Manager for People3, a full service diversity and inclusion firm headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. Last year, we brought a group of panelists together to reflect on their experiences as Black DEI professionals in the wake of large-scale social unrest. Here we are a year later, and everything and nothing has changed. We wanted to bring those panelists back and add a fresh perspective to the group. I want to introduce our moderator for today's event. Please welcome Amiee Sadler. Amiee is the Education and Training Manager for People3. She has been a vocal advocate for DEI causes from a very young age and was recently named one of Nashville's 40 Under 40. Welcome, Amiee.
Thank you so much, Camelia. Since the first time we were together last year, there have been some encouraging changes in the conversation around the Black experience, but the question is now, has it been enough? There are ongoing conversations on the topics of mass incarceration and the struggle for police accountability today. Conversations are emerging, like those around legislation banning talking about racism in classrooms to protect innocent white children, while Black parents are still teaching their children the rules of living while Black. Systemic inequities continue to cost billions of dollars of potential income to be lost, homes still not allowed to be bought, ongoing gentrification, and unequal and inequitable outcomes for education. The COVID-19 pandemic is still disproportionately affecting Black communities, all while HBCUs are receiving more government funding, which is long overdue. Today, we want to have a conversation to help aid in understanding what it's like to be Black in America. We want to talk about the strides being made and the work still to be done. We want to amplify Black voices and give space for honesty and learning. We want to welcome you to Conversations in Black. On the panel today, we have McNeal, Anthony Peterson, Isaac Addae, Neitra, and ReChard Peel. Mia, also known as the Workshop Whisperer, is the founder and CEO of Gold Digging and is a well-known and loved consultant in the DEI space. Tony Peterson is a TEDx speaker whose TED Talk, What I'm Learning About Race from My White Grandchildren, has more than 3 million views. Dr. Isaac Addae is a first-generation Ghanaian American, best-selling author of Black Boy Fly and Chief Strategy Officer at Pivot Technology School. Neitra is head of human resources at Round Hill Music and is an HR consultant for People3. ReChard Peel is a People3 consultant, a PhD candidate at Indiana State University, as well as Assistant Director of the Black Culture Center at Vanderbilt University. I want to thank you all so much for your participation and the emotional labor you're giving us today. So let's get started. For our first question, I would love for everyone to give me an answer. When we had this conversation last year, we were right at the beginning on what some called America's racial reckoning. What has changed for you based on your experiences in the past year, or what has stayed the same? So don't all speak at once.
Well, I'll start us off with this conversation. For me in the past year, I think the main thing that has changed is that a lot of these conversations are moving closer to the forefront. I think for me personally, they had always been at the forefront, but I have met a lot of other people for whom these conversations have moved to the front of their mind when I know it wasn't there before. And so for me, that has changed and made it easier to have some of these conversations with folks, especially folks who don't identify as Black.
And I would want to respond, ReChard, kind of respond to you, because in the past year, my experience has been actually the opposite with the folks around me, where a year ago, we were still sort of feeling the effects of murders and other incidents. And so people were willing to talk around me more than I would say they are now. I think that there's a sense of burnout, which I was afraid would happen. And so for me, the past year has been less and less attention from the people around me. And I would exclude my family from that, but from the people around me than we had, say, a year ago.
You know, Tony, it's interesting you say that. One of the things that I talk about in a lot of my circles is this idea of compassion fatigue. Mm-hmm. We just don't have the energy to keep talking about it. I think that's come to the forefront for a lot of people in the past year.
Yes, I can absolutely identify with that. I think that for me, if I've seen any change, is just an appreciation or understanding of nuance, right? And really having much deeper conversations around experiences of Black people versus that of any other on earth, and really digging far deeper than the headlines, right, if you will, because so much of what we encounter in our daily lives aren't headline kind of events. They're regular type of events. And so just trying to talk about those type of things instead of just, you know, what is the trending topic of the day.
Absolutely.
I actually would agree with ReChard, but it's changed me in a way that makes me feel compelled to share more. So in the past, I didn't feel comfortable, and now I don't care about how comfortable it makes someone else feels. I'm still going to share. So it has changed me in a way that has allowed me, even if my friends don't bring up the conversation or don't address certain issues, I'm going to do it. So it's made me feel more comfortable sharing and not considering that other person. I mean, sharing in a way that allows them to at least hear my experience, but I'm not as much consumed about this African-American girl being in a white space. So,
you know, it's really interesting to hear everybody's thoughts on this. I think for me, I've noticed a couple of things. I've noticed that as a society, we've gone closer towards supporting diverse voices and promoting people from diverse backgrounds, but it's almost been an equal and opposite effect in the other direction, with people becoming more entrenched in choosing not to support what's happening and all the energy that's around the racial reckoning. But for me personally, it has really shown me my role in this process, and that I have a responsibility to use my voice to be one of those agents of change, if you know, for lack of a better term, in this whole movement.
It absolutely has, and it's so interesting working in this space. Personally, I'm very loud, very adamant, sometimes very much so in your face about what I feel, and responding to microaggressions that I used to brush off because I was afraid of what the response would be. But it's interesting balancing that with my personal persona of making sure that I'm allowing space for people to make mistakes. And like, I do that personally, but in the work that we do, I think it's super important, especially as people are coming to these understandings, which leads us perfectly to my next question. How have the events since 2020 changed your approach to working in the DEI space?
So to piggyback, Amiee, off of what, you know, a couple of you just talked about, in terms of people being entrenched in their ideas, what I found is that, you know, I like to talk a whole lot more about equity than equality. And when you talk about equity, most people think that means they have to give up something, right? So that causes people to be entrenched. If you are talking about race, that means that you are erasing, you know, the history as we know it. If you are saying that we need to address inequities in housing and things like that, then you're taking something from me. You're taking away my opportunity. And I think the approach I've had going forward is to have a bit of patience and empathy in terms of how people may see it that way, so that it allows a space to have a conversation that shows it's not taking anything from you, right? Because I think that's what it comes down to. I hate the word race. I hate the word race. I hate the word race. That implies a winner and a loser, right? And so it's just in us to think that for one person to have something, it's taking something away from another. And so I think that when you can really dig down and have those conversations where you're exercising empathy both ways. I'm not going to have someone empathize with my Black experience and not empathize with their experience, whatever it may be, to get to a more level set type of understanding of how we move forward.
So Mia, real quick, I want you to explain the difference between equity and equality, because I think that's a huge conversation that doesn't really get enough notice, because I think we all have some different views on what the differences actually are.
So for me, when I talk about equity and equality, because we are the race of people, I use an example of a race. So, and my daughter ran track and my son, so that's easier for me to put my head around. When you're talking about equality, that means that everybody starts at the same starting line, and whoever runs the fastest wins the race, right? Equity is when someone has a 50-yard head start. It doesn't matter how fast someone is. They can't catch a 50, well, Usain Bolt maybe. So, and I say that, and it's such a great example because there are some people that despite all of that, they beat you, right? They will do well, but that's rare. That's not normal, right? So when we're talking about equity, the easiest way to visualize it is that if you have a group of people who truly are starting 200, 300, 400 years behind, you have to leave space to catch up, because no matter how hard you run, how hard you fight, how hard you work, it does not matter. You can never get to a place of equal, right? It's only equal if you all start at the same spot. And the history of Black people in this country and this world is that we haven't. And so we have to address that.
Thank you so much, Tony.
Yeah, Mia, I want to go back to something you said earlier about nuance. And I think one thing that has changed in the work that I'm doing in this DEI space, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is to dig deeper into that nuance. And I actually try to avoid any of those hot button issues in the media. And when I say I avoid them, I don't mean that they're unimportant, and I don't mean that I don't ever address them, but I don't address them on the terms that the media has brought them out, or whomever, because, you know, they're called hot button for a reason. And we know that when we're talking about these issues of difference and our different experiences and our different identities, it's never about those hot button issues. Those are distractions from our real experiences. But they are also opportunities for us to talk about those things in order to get to the deeper things, to the more important things. Critical race theory is not being taught in our grade schools. What is being taught is a more rounded and more accurate description of history, and that's a good thing. We don't have to call it CRT because it isn't. It is not some law theory that you get in graduate school. That's not what's being taught. But what is taught is more accurate reading of history. And so when those hot button issues come, we can not address them directly and still use them as an opportunity to correct the record in one sense.
Absolutely. ReChard?
Yeah, so for me, I would say this isn't something that I have necessarily changed, but this is something that I have noticed is a broader shift in the DEI landscape. I think that we are getting to a place, and I'm excited for it. We're getting to a place where more DEI professionals and people who do this work are centering systemic issues rather than personal issues. And while it's important to talk through personal experiences and lived experiences, that is very helpful and so powerful and so important. And stories are important. But if we want to create change, we have to move through that into a place where we're talking about the actual systems of inequality in our society. It's one thing to try to address, you know, microaggression and things that happen to individuals. It's a whole nother thing to talk about how do we fix the education system so that everyone is being educated in equitable ways that allow them to thrive? How do we fix the housing crisis in our country so that everyone is able to live in sustainable and affordable housing? How do we fix, you know, infrastructure? Like all of these things that are systemic issues, and I think we're moving in that direction when it comes to DEI, which is what I'm super excited about. And I think that George Floyd and some of the things that happened in 2020 is actually a catalyst for that, for those conversations, because it became, you know, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, those were incidents not dissimilar to incidents that happened in the past, but they were a catalyst to say, why does this keep happening? What is the system around this? More so than they were just, oh, it's terrible that happened to that individual. Now people are starting to get deeper into these systemic issues. So that's something I've noticed that has changed.
One of the things,
I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, one of the things that we say in a lot of our education opportunities are policies are easier to change than people. And I think one of the things for me that has become more apparent in the past year and a half is I'm not going to be able to change most people's minds. And I had to realize that it wasn't my job to change anybody's mind. I had to give people the information and let them do with it what they were going to do with it. Hopefully it meant something. Hopefully it's impactful, but I can't make someone see my humanity. I can't make someone see my value. But what I can do is work on the systems in place that have traditionally undermined that. And Tony, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to say also in response to ReChard, you know, we've always been talking, and I know you know this, we've always been talking about systemic racism, but or systemic all kinds of things. But I agree with you. I think people are hearing systemic discrimination now in a way that they weren't hearing it before. I think they're understanding it now, when before it was just a phrase. And now I think people are seeing this in operation, and they're seeing an incident happen and they go, oh man, has that been happening all along? And so yeah, I agree with you.
So Tony, as always, you gave me the perfect lead in for my next question. There are lots of instances that have happened. I know last year in particular, right before the verdict in the George Floyd murder came down, we got real popular real quick. People wanted to have conversations and have resources in place for their employees, regardless of what the verdict was. So, you know, to make sure their employees had a way to have those conversations to kind of deal with it, because I think we all understand, even though it's not directly work related, it's very work related. You know, we don't get to leave everything happening in the world around us at home when we go to work. So, you know, over the past year, there have been a wide variety of instances that have been centered around race, media, social justice events, violence, verdicts, like all the things. So my next question is, how are you able to process everything that is brought up in relationship to balancing your personal and professional lives?
You know, Amiee, when I heard this question, my initial thought is not well, but I'll just say from a professional perspective, you know, I'm aware of my Blackness and what I represent in any environment that I occupy space in professionally. And so I think my presence shows a different perspective on what it means to be a Black male in America. And I think that's just by virtue of me being me. But personally, it's really challenging for me. And I actually have taken a vow to not watch any more of the content that goes out about the police incidences, you know, just it got to a place for me where it was a bit traumatizing. And so when my friends send me the videos, I typically don't watch it. I'll read the articles, but I don't consume the content. And I think that's helped me personally. I know that as a country, we're all more aware of what's happening, but it's not new, right? These things have been happening. But I think because there's such a big spotlight shown on everything that's happening now, you know, people like myself are seeing these things, and it's a re-traumatizing experience every time we consume the content. So I personally have vowed to not watch these killings happen on social media, but to do my part professionally to demonstrate what it means to be me and my existence in Black America. And of course, obviously doing the same with my children as well.
Yeah, I would have to agree as well. I have not, my balance is staying away from social media, and then also not following court cases. Like, I just, it is traumatizing. It gets really heavy. And then when you have children, you're thinking about where they are, what they're doing, and then not just um, regular things, driving, car accident, all of that kind of stuff. But now you're trying to make sure they're not stopped by the police. You can't ensure that, no matter what they do, they may be subject to, that police officer and their thoughts and views on, people of color. So it gets overwhelming. And I don't want to just sit in fear, and I don't want to spread that to my children either. So I have just stayed away from social media. I've stayed away from certain events. I mean, I'll find out about certain things, of course, through conversation with other people, but I don't get into details right now, just because I have a daughter who's in college at Mississippi State, so she's away from home. She's in Mississippi, and I just don't want to, again, I don't want to sit in hopelessness. I do think it will get better, but if you continue to look at the news and when we see the headlines, it just doesn't look like it's getting better. So, in order for me to stay positive, in order for me to even work in a space that it's not very many people that look like me. So, I have to be careful about what I take into the workplace. I want to take myself. I want to share my experiences if people want to hear them, but I don't want to take in resentment. I don't want to take in anger. So I have to make sure that I'm feeding myself appropriately so that I can share my experience appropriately and then be the light regardless of what's happening. So always, remaining hopeful. So.
Neitra,
And,
so go ahead, Dr. Addae, I'm sorry.
no, I'm sorry. You go ahead. I was going to just make a follow-up comment.
So Neitra, I have two 15-year-olds, a boy and a girl. And when they go out, I am terrified. And I realize that fear is because this is all I see on the media. And so I had to take a moment and take a step back and say, there's a difference between protecting my children as a parent would, and then protecting my children as a Black mother to Black children. And that balance for me has been really, really hard to find. And like that fear, I get it, because my son walks home from school and I'm terrified he's going to be stopped by a police officer for walking while Black. He's a young Black man who wears hoodies because he runs track. Like, I'm terrified from 2:05 to 2:55 until he hits my door. because I know he's a young Black man in America, and they don't know that he's sweet and innocent and silly and goofy. He's just another Black boy with a hood on. And it's just terrifying. And I can't, like, I know for me personally, I can't watch everything that happens because I will never leave the house, and I won't let them leave the house.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was going to just say, I was having a conversation with one of our children recently, and we work with them to do like lemonade stands and different things in the summer. And so, they want to do it again this summer, and they want to go knock on doors and bring people to the lemonade stand. And I was thinking to myself, like, man, if I tell them that they can't do this and why, from my reasoning, I have now conditioned them to think a certain way. But as children, they're innocent. They don't even know that these things exist, right? So I just wanted to kind of share that, because I think a lot of this trauma, we pass it on, and I have to be very careful about how do I pass that trauma on to my children. And it's not just seeing and hearing about incidences of people of color that are Black, but anybody from any ethnicity, seeing all of that content. We've seen incidences with Asian American folks as well. It's all traumatic.
So I tricked my algorithm. Because I love social media. So it wasn't easy for me to just quit, for us to just break up. But I did trick my algorithm. And so every time I saw anything triggering, I said, I don't want to see this. I reported the video. I was like, nope, nope, nope. Until now, the only thing really I have on social media is people being silly, laughing, my family, what everybody is doing, that type of thing. And I wanted to level set so I could lean into my lived experiences, right? What in my lived, not what I see every day, not what I see on television, not what I see on social media. What do I see each day, and how do I manage my way through that life, right? And a lot of times what we see can become our life, right? What we see, we're expecting it, we're ready for it. We are always playing defense, and it's exhausting. Like, it just flat out it's exhausting. And I also wanted to add how we have weird perceptions of time. And so as much as I think, God, we have been dealing with this forever, and we really have. When I think about time, so what changed for me over the course of a year is I became a grandmother. And when she was born, I thought to myself that I am a bridge between such a wide variety of what people have lived through. My grandmother was born in 1910. She was alive. She was 3 when Harriet Tubman died. I think it's important to say that. That wasn't 1,000 years ago. That's my grandmother. She was alive when Harriet Tubman died. She was 3, right? Yet in my lifetime, I've seen a Black president. Like, in the span of that time, I've had that. Yet the problem persists of me being truly unsafe in this world. And I know that. And so it hasn't been a long time, but it's been forever, if that makes sense to you guys, right? Like, I feel like it's just been forever, but it's been a very short time of all of those things. And so what is the most frustrating thing to me is for people to say, why don't you get over it? Why don't, it's been forever ago. It's been a long time ago. No, it has not. Like, people, my mom, these people are still living. People during the civil rights era who were throwing sicking dogs and spraying water hoses, and these people are still alive. They're baby boomers. They're not old. This stuff is not old and ancient. And I think it's important that we understand that when we have these types of conversations.
Mia, it's so interesting you say that. There's a movie that's coming out that's based on a true story of a family that was still literally held in slavery into 1963. So we're not talking about 1863. We're talking within the past 50 or so years. The family had no idea that nothing had changed, As far as they knew, Black people were still enslaved, and a woman escaped and came into the 60s right in the middle of the civil rights movement. So we're not talking about 100 years ago.
Right.
We're talking about the time frame where my mother was a teenager. We do have a question in the chat that Dr. Addae answered, but I kind of want to bring it to Neitra as well. The question or comment is, shouldn't we be explaining it to them as a way to bring awareness as to in regards to not sharing things with children? And I think it's an interesting question, because I think it really depends on the family, the structure, and how old your kids are and what they're being exposed to. Because with teenagers, they have to know. With younger children, you know, what is the balance? How do you decide what to share and who to share it with?
Well,
Yeah, Amiee. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Neitra.
Go ahead.
I apologize. Go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say it definitely depends on the age. I think it depends on your child too. So you have to consider the person that your child is, but also the age. So my daughter is 18. Yes, she's aware of some things from us, but she's also aware. So we do have to have the conversation, because she's going to be aware from social media regardless, right? These things are going to come up. You can't hide them. She is going to be aware. And so I have to have conversations with her about what to do in these situations, even though we all know that even if you do everything, you know, there are some instances where people have done as they've been asked and they're still not here to tell the story, right? But I do have to have that conversation with her. I won't have that same conversation with my 11-year-old right now, because I don't want to condition his mind. I don't want him, it's I don't know if there's a perfect answer for this, because depending on what I say to him, he can walk out the door and think every time someone does something, it's because of this. Could be true, could not be true, right? So I think you have to consider your child, their personality, their maturity, and then their age. And that's the conversation is based on that. Do I share the history with my son at 11? Yes. Do I share our history, you know, and what we've gone through? Yes. But how much do I share with him regarding present day, you know, things that happen that are torturous to our people and people of color in general? So, you know, I definitely think you have to consider the child, the maturity, and the age. But we do have those conversations with my daughter. But I also, again, you know, she's in a different state than I am. I don't want her to walk out her door. I want her to be aware, but I just don't want everything to trigger her either. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's a challenge.
I want to, you know, for me, I think it's important to teach our kids all of those things, but I think it's equally important to teach them the wins, right? Teach them how proud they should be, how accomplished so many people who look like them are, how far we have come despite it. The fact that I am even here and I exist means that in my DNA, we were able to survive the Middle Passage and all kind of tomfoolery. I'm that chick, right? I think it's important to talk about our wins, how intelligent, how in math, you have all of these brilliant minds. In engineering, you have these brilliant minds, despite whatever circumstances it is. I think that it's important to teach our children more than suffering. And I don't think that happens often enough. And I don't want them to walk in this world and see themselves as a victim or see themselves as someone who has so much stacked against them that they can't do it anyway, because that might inadvertently change them into being a person that says, why even try?
Right.
I don't want that legacy on my children. So yes, I want them to be aware. I want them to be safe, but I think it's also important for them to walk with a certain level of dignity, because they are important and they are capable. And given the benefit they will succeed. I think that's very important to teach our kids, not just to be walking in fear all the time.
I agree.
You're
I
spot
agree.
on.
And I want to sort of take us back to a year ago, because I think I made a similar comment to the one I'm about to make. That lesson, Mia, is not only for our children, and by our children, I mean Black children or children of color. That's a message about us for all children. And I say that, as you all know, the context I'm coming from, where I have all these white grandchildren. They need to hear that message about us as well. They need to hear our wins as well, not just hear us as the victims of history, but that we are overcomers, that we are not only overcomers, but we are, as you say, we're inventors. We are, we have a lot to offer the world. And yes, we have suffered. And one of the things we have to offer the world is how to get through suffering. That's one, but we win in so many other ways.
And
I love it all.
I just want to add real quick. I would say that that message is not just a historical message either. Like we should be bringing that into the present day, talking about the ways in which Black people are thriving and doing amazing things today. I was just reading about TikTok and the creators on TikTok, and some of the biggest trends are coming from Black people. I guess that's always been the case with social media, but imagine, if younger kids who are using TikTok need to recognize and see that. They need to understand that Black people are the creators of these trends that you are, using every day, or the trends that you are a part of every day. Black people are the ones who are doing those things. Black people are the ones who have created and sustained some of the brilliance that creates our culture. And is continuing to create our culture.
Yeah. I was just going to add in, going back to the kids conversation. My sons are 11, and 7. And so for me, I think because of their ages, we approach these conversations from a very delicate perspective, especially with the youngest one, because how much truth do we give them without fundamentally shaping who they are and their outlook on the world? And shaping that in a negative way. And so for us, it's all about teaching our kids that they are great people, but we also give them the truth about the fact that, there are great people in the world, but there's also other energy out there that you have to be aware of. We don't often just label it as a race thing or ethnicity thing. We often just couch it in the conversation of this is just people in general. And sometimes it cuts across ethnicity, race, gender, but they're just people you have to be aware of. But we're getting to the point where, we're starting to have more real conversations because they're getting older.
Absolutely. You all are fantastic and such great perspectives. And I think it's super important for this conversation to keep happening. So I'm going to move questions around a little bit from what we previously discussed, so bear with me. But one of the questions is, what do you think needs to happen via policy and organizations moving forward to improve the lives of Black Americans? And it's related to a question we have in the Q&A asking, how do we talk to our kids about banning books? How do we talk to our kids about what's happening? And I think those two questions really go hand in hand.
Yeah, so I'll jump in here. I think to me, there's so many policies that can change. Like there's just hundreds and hundreds upon hundreds of policies that we could talk about and discuss here. But I think for me, education is a big part. Obviously, I work in higher education. I work at Vanderbilt, and I'm earning a PhD in higher education as well. So I center a lot of my life around education, and so for me, the education policies are some of the most important. Yeah, not that other policies are unimportant, but for just in my personal context, education policies are very important. And so I would say that we it's not just about policy, but it's about understanding the ways in which politics and thing on those things work, right? The reason that CRT is becoming such a polarizing conversation, even though critical race theory is just an obscure theory from the legal realm. The reason it's becoming that way is because there are people who know how to move those conversations, who know how to navigate and work our politics and move those conversations to the forefront. There are people who know how to go from state to state, drafting bills that state legislators aren't even really reading. They're just signing off on them because they're conservative bills, right? There are people who know how to navigate that particular system. So for me, it's not just the policies. I mean, it's the policies that need to change, but it's also a deeper entrenchment of understanding how policies actually how politics actually function, how policies are being drafted, like getting people into those spaces to understand how to combat some of these policies that are coming out, but also how to navigate and move conversations to the forefront. Why is CRT at the forefront and not some of the broader initiatives to change our education system for the better, right? It's because there are not enough the same people in place who have that ability to navigate the politics and create and put those policies at the forefront. So for me, I like to stress the idea of educating ourselves about politics and policies and how those things operate and move.
To that end, one thing I would like to say is politics are local, right? And most of the big issues we've seen in the media play out on a very local level. And I would challenge anybody in here to tell me who was sitting on the city council, who's on your on your school district, who is your prosecuting attorney, who's the coroner, who is the superintendent of that school, who are these people on a very local level. You talked about state legislators, who represents your district? Have you ever had a conversation with them? Are you ever holding them accountable? I think that the people who are Black people and people who are allies of Black people, if I had one dream come true, I would tell you to understand that every policy, every law, every institution are working exactly like they were designed to. Even beyond race, right? They were designed for a few to do well and for the many to support those few, right? The reality is that as Black people, we're never the few. We're generally speaking the many. And so those policies are not designed for us. So if you really want to move the needle, hold that coroner accountable, hold that prosecutor accountable, find out who your local legislators are. You think about what you need in your life in order to be better. Find out how are they deciding who gets contracts, right? What businesses are getting contracts? Find out why they are suspending your child more than they are suspending the white child. Find out those type of things. Hold those people accountable. I think that it's irresponsible and quite frankly, easy to say, what do we need to do? And it's these big things. When it's those big things, you can easily walk away and say, well, I can't do anything about that. I voted. I did my part. That's not your part, player. You got way more to do. You need to go deeper. You need to dig in. You need to run for office. You need to hold your local officials accountable if you want to see change and not think about something like, I'm not saying don't think about critical race theory, but we got bigger fish to fry, right? When I was in school, they said that the slaves were happily going about their day doing chores. That's what the book said, right? And because of that, my father ran for school board and that book was no longer there. So when you see something, do something. Don't just say something, do something.
Another mic drop moment for Mia. Mia has the absolute best mic drops, and that's fantastic. Thank you.
You know, Amiee, I wanted to address the question from an organizational perspective and just talk about how from a, I would say, policy, organizational policy, I think organizations should push to have their strategy aligned with this idea of inclusion. I think that's probably the single most important thing any business can do today. Any business that is offering a product or a service to a customer is likely dealing with a diverse audience in some capacity that does not reflect the leadership structure, the board governance of their organization. And I think that that's where people of color, specifically Black people, can find support and allyship in organizations saying, you know what, let's look across the board, let's look top and down, and let's realign our corporate strategy so that we can be more inclusive. It's going to benefit the organization from a performance perspective, we know that, but it's also just the right thing to do.
Absolutely. Neitra?
No, I was gonna kind of piggyback off of what Mia was saying. There are things that we can do within our own communities. I don't know if I shared this before, but right before my daughter's last year in school, I don't know what year it is. Like, we've been in the house for a long time, right? So anyway, but she was in high school, and I got a call saying that they had taken her, that they were, I didn't understand the call, but to make a long story short, they had taken her to juvenile. They had arrested her. I didn't understand that because my mind does not go there. So when they told me, the school called and said that she and her boyfriend were in the hallway, she pushed him, and that was domestic violence, right? And so they told me where to pick her up. But because my mind doesn't work like that, I didn't even understand that I was going to the juvenile detention center to pick her up. So I followed back up with the high school, and I was just so shocked. So I went and picked her up, and it was kind of like, what is going on? Like, she was put in the back of a police car, and she was shocked. I was shocked. I went to our high school and saw the video where she pushed him. She did push him, but it was domestic violence. And then because they have police in the school, and it was just so weird to me because I said, how do you even know they're a couple? Like, kids break up every other day, right? Like, what makes you think they're a couple? Like, they're not married. So, and she literally pushed him. It was just shocking to me. And I was thinking about that the other day on how I need to follow up on that so another kid doesn't have this experience. So first of all, she's a Black girl. Now she has a record. And now, because we have police in school, instead of you policing the things that need to be policed, you've given this girl a record for pushing what you thought was her boyfriend when they could have been broken up, for pushing him. It didn't hurt him, but and so it's just shocking to me how things like this happen all the time. Depending on what kind of parents you have, what kind of influence, that could be the start of someone going downhill and having a record that can impact them for the rest of their lives. So it was just shocking for me to even have that experience. But to Mia's point, what did I do? I was so just like, I was like, do I get a lawyer? Like, I was so shocked. But I do have work to do. And so what you said, Mia, is even convicting to me. Like, I have work to do to ensure this doesn't happen to someone else, but also we don't get kids started on the wrong path. Things like this happen all the time.
I think it's you made such a valid point. When situations happen, I don't think a lot of times we know what to do. We know we want to do something, but there's not like a guide to, oh, if A happens, then you automatically do B, you automatically do C. And I think it's super important that we continue to have these conversations. We ask people who are in positions of power, we ask our judges, we have attorneys, we ask politicians, what steps do I need to take? We build relationships with community organization. We have some organizations have employee assistance plans. If I call my EAP, is there someone who can help guide me through this situation? And if there's not, what do we do collectively to become that resource for others? I think it goes back to the idea of it takes a village. And when things happen in isolation, if you don't know how to move forward, you get stuck. When you have a community of people around you to push you forward, you can make change.
And then you get stuck in that mindset. I got to get back to work. I got to support my family. I got to get back. So you're spinning the wrong wheel, because that's what we're conditioned to do. Like, I got to support my family. I got to get back to work. I don't know what happened here. And so, even in that instance, I know there have been other children. My daughter even took a video a couple weeks after, where a teacher was standing right there, and it was white kids that did the same thing down the hall. Nothing happened. Oh, because they were not a couple. It just brought to light some things that your kids even experience that you don't even realize, or the rules and regulations that are in schools that I wouldn't have never have known. Like, why is this an issue in a high school, and it wasn't a brawl or anything like that. So it's just, yeah.
Amiee, I try to pull I guess it's a WWWMD. What would a white man do? Like, look, that's what my thought process goes to, because I feel like in that power, if I put on my, wealthy white man hat, then I'm going everywhere. I'm going to the media. I'm going to, I'm going to the school district. I'm going to the police station. I'm going to the judge. I'm calling every friend I know. I'm wrecking my brain trying to think of who I have contacts with. Who did I play golf with? Who did I do this with? Who did I go to church with? I'm calling everybody, because I do think that thing that, I know you try not to do gender, and we try not to think of things that way, but it is a power in that assurance of being a wealthy white, not just any white man. I'm talking about a wealthy, powerful white man. What would Warren Buffett do in this situation? Warren Buffett would be chopping heads, right? So I want to put on my Warren Buffett and cause a ruckus and not be worried about being called an angry Black woman. You damn right. I am angry. You got my baby sitting in here in jail. I'm supposed to be. That's the appropriate reaction, right? But I think that we sit and wonder, who can I call? Everybody, Neitra, everybody. And I'm on it, girl. You let me know what we need to do, because I'm ready. I'm ready.
Oh, I'm ready too. I'm sorry. It didn't matter if it happened in the past. I just don't.
I don't care. Don't care. I am ready.
Absolutely. Mia, I have my wall of inspiration and quotes, and one of my quotes aligns very strongly to what you just said. I will count myself out of situations before I give anyone else a chance to. And when I get into that moment, when I have that moment of self-doubt, my thought is, would a white man have the same question? And it's because I've been conditioned my entire life to be quiet, to sit down, to not stir don't stir the pot, don't rock the ship, like don't be that person, don't make anybody angry, fly low. And I can't do that. I have to have the confidence of someone who's been handed everything in life to say, oh, it's fine, I can do this. Because it happens to women, it happens especially to Black women. And I think it goes back to that community mentality. We have to remind each other, you are strong, you are powerful, you have a voice that matters. Excuse me. Mia, you dropped the mic again. So many great things. We do have a couple questions in the chat that I want to get to, since we're coming up towards the end of our time. A question that's been asked almost the same twice. Is, how do you react to someone who says we do not have a race problem in the US, we had a Black president? So that idea that we're in a post-racial society. And it goes to the idea of, how do I get over that emotional and angry feeling to what people are saying? And how do you bring awareness and educate people when they have those moments? And how do you handle that? How do you handle that moment? How do you get past the anger and move towards change?
You know, the reality is, in some cases, you're not going to be able to change people's mind, and that's just the truth. Some people have very entrenched views, and no matter what you say and no matter what you do, they're going to believe what they believe. Personally, I like to lead by example, and I let my work and my walk through the world show something different, if that makes sense. I have had a lot of conversations with colleagues in corporate world and academic world that are from other backgrounds different than mine. And I think once I'm able to get them to empathize with me and put themselves in my shoes and take my perspective, we make progress in terms of conversations because they're able to say, okay, you know, well, if I was in his shoes and I experienced it that way, it makes sense. I just think often we lack empathy for other people, and we don't want to see their perspective. We don't want to take their side, and you know, that's human nature. But I've had success in getting people to think differently by just leading by example, one, and then encouraging them to empathize and take my perspective with things that I've experienced, and that has helped.
Yeah, Dr. Addae, I would totally agree with you in terms of empathy. I talk about empathy in conjunction with curiosity and humility. And anyone who says there's no race problem in the US doesn't have any of those. And I totally agree with you in terms of whether we spend time trying to change their minds or not, because they've already made up their minds. And we can develop empathy. We can develop curiosity about people who are different from us. We can develop humility, although we really have to start with humility, because if I believe that the way I've lived my life is the only way people should live their lives, that what I think is the only thing that's true, then my mind can't be changed. Right. So it has to start with humility. It has to start with a sense that every person in this world lives their life differently than I live mine. And if we're not there, then we're not interested in solving problems. We're not interested in seeing reality. We're interested in just, you know, saying what we have to say. And like you said, they're not interested in change. And
I typically ask them, do they believe in reverse racism? Mm-hmm. Because typically the person that says that would also believe that that's a such thing, right? And when they say yes, I always say, then you believe there's a race problem. I mean, it's simple as that. If you believe that exists, then you know that there's a problem. So how do we solve it? And most of the time, because I've actually said exactly that, and the person started laughing. And I was like, okay, so can we talk about it now? Now that we both agree that it's some tomfoolery going on here. But I do think that you have to call it out. Now, you might let it slide. You might say, I can't convince this person, but I'm not going to let you say that and act like I didn't hear you say that. I'm just not built that way.
Yeah, someone said that to me directly.
Says that.
I'm sorry, Amy.
No, I was saying, Mia, I think we both have a TikTok that says that we're not just going to slide by that like that didn't just happen.
Yeah. If someone says it to me, I address it differently than this this person in the chat asking us what we should do. Well, you know, situations are different. They differ from person to person, but yeah, sometimes you have to just call it out.
So we are right at about, oh, go ahead, ReChard, I'm sorry.
I agree with what everybody else said. I just wanted to add that I think it goes back to my earlier point. What I like to do in situations like that is I start at a systemic level, because a lot of times those systemic issues are objective. You can't really deny. If I point out the discrepancies in a particular system, you can't really deny those things. And so that objective reality, then I merge that with the personal stories that create empathy after I've gotten you to a point where you're recognizing objective the objective reality of the situation. Now I can get you to empathize, and then so I think oftentimes a lot of people work the opposite way, where it's like, oh, I'm trying to get you to recognize my personal story and and a lot of times that won't work, because if you're being personal, then they're going to see that as personal as well, and that becomes, oh, you're attacking white people, or you're attacking people who, and so, but if you depersonalize it in the beginning, then they can't say that you're attacking me. No, it's not. I'm clearly talking about the system. I'm not talking about you as a person.
Sure.
So that's that's kind of how I view it.
I also think it depends on your audience, right? The life of a poor white person looks a lot like the life of a poor Black person. Let's be clear. And so sometimes when you're having that question or saying those things, when you talk about systematic inequities, truly it does impact Black people a certain type of way, but it also can impact other people who are in rural areas, people who don't have access. There are people in Kentucky and probably Tennessee and Arkansas that don't have access to Wi-Fi because of where they're living. And so I think that when you talk about that, you have to also use that empathy to know that reality may look a lot like yours. And that's a lot of time, that's a place to start building that common ground.
You all are fantastic. We are right at about 2 minutes till we have to end. So I want to ask each of you to give me like your 10 to 15 second sound bite for what do you want most Americans to know about the everyday experiences of Black individuals as they walk through the world, in organizations, and just their day-to-day life. So if you could have everyone know one thing in one sentence, what would that be?
Black people are not monolithic.
The words right out of my mouth.
Yeah, mine too. There's 3 TV shows that I want to commend. One called Grand Crew, one called Southside, one called Abbott Elementary, and they all three comedies, and they make that point that Black people are not monolithic.
Yeah. I won't repeat the statement. I'll just encourage people to look at the book. It's called Disintegration. It's an older book, great book. It talks about how Black America is really 4 separate fragments of people. So when you hear the term Black America, or when you hear something happen to a Black person, there are many different types of Black people. I'm Black, but I'm a first-generation American. My parents are considered Black, but they were born in Ghana. Black people are from different walks of life and different backgrounds, and there's not just one Black America anymore, I'd say.
And the Black person at your job is not the spokesperson for every Black person.
Well, Neitra.
I agree. I'm not the spokesperson for every Black person. I have my views, but I'm not the spokesperson. I would say I hear, I've seen people say before, I'm tired of having this conversation. We're tired of having it too. We want things to get better, but we shouldn't be talking about the same things 5 years from now. So we are just as exhausted having the conversation. It can get definitely emotionally draining, but we definitely want the world to be a better place. So we will have the conversation, but we are just as exhausted as you are.
Neitra, thank you so much. All of you, thank you so much. I just want to take this time to thank you all so much for being fantastic panelists, for our audience for having such great questions and input. We recognize that there are still more questions than answers at this point, but we do hope that this has been an impactful conversation. We invite you all to continue to ask and seek thoughtful answers and ask thoughtful questions. Please feel free to reach out to People3 at info@people3.co and to utilize the anti-racism resources available on our website at people3.co. And that's CO, not COM. I messed that up for a while too. But thank you again for joining us for Conversations in Black. You've been fantastic.